here, Good Morning Britain is leading the Pride Month celebrations by highlighting the work of those who've made history within the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah, we're kicking things off with a truly inspirational activist whose every step has paved the way for many to live their truth. Made in Chelsea star Ollie Locke has been to meet him.
June is the month of Pride, where we celebrate the LGBT community.
One of the true leaders of gay rights who really inspired me is Pride idol Ted Brown. This is his story.
I realised I was gay when I was around 12 years old. I didn't know the term gay in those days. I went to the library to look up this word, homosexual, and the dictionary defined homosexuality as a perverse attraction to someone of the same sex. So that was the start of my awareness of how hostile society was.
In 1959, Ted, along with his mother Dorothy, a civil rights activist, arrived from America. Then 4 years later, he shared his truth with her.
She had spoken to me about her experience in the civil rights movement. When I came out to my mother and I said, "Mum, I think I'm becoming homosexual," she explained that she was sad because I was going to have to deal with the hostility towards black people and the hostility towards homosexual people.
It was 1970 and Ted joined the Gay Liberation Front, where Ted was instrumental in the 1971 Pride Before Pride. This was a mass kiss-in where members of the community shared a kiss proudly in public.
None of the photographs of the kissing actually appeared in the newspapers because I think they would have found it too shocking.
Happy Pride, everybody!
2023 marks 51 years of Pride in London. So I brought Ted to the Bishopsgate Institute in central London to look back on how far we've come.
People like myself wouldn't be able to come out had it not been for your generation of people doing what you did.
Some of us felt maybe when we start marching, some of us who are marching will get scared and drop out. But that didn't happen. There were more people at the end of the march than there were when we started. One of the things that motivates me about this is trying to do it for the generations of people who could never do that. We just have to keep on fighting.
He is indeed a Pride idol, isn't he? Ted and Ollie join us now. Good morning to both of you. Thank you so much for coming in. It's an amazing moment in that, Ted, when you talked about looking up the definition of homosexual in the dictionary. I'm assuming it's changed significantly now, but a perverse attraction to somebody of the same sex, and that's a dictionary. How did that make you feel?
Pretty depressed, because I was studying English at school, and I thought, being the Oxford Dictionary, if it had a negative definition of homosexuality, I looked through to see if there was a positive definition of homosexuality, but that was it. A perverse attraction to someone of your own sex.
Gosh.
And that was before I came out.
And so that took some courage with that in your mind to come out. Your mum was worried, not about you being homosexual, but about what you might face. Was it as tough as she feared in those early days?
Well, in the early days, it wasn't that much of an issue because I didn't tell anyone else for quite a long time. But my mother was surprisingly inspirational to me because she had been involved in the civil rights movement. And when I told her that I thought I was becoming homosexual, because that's the only word I knew at the time, I didn't know gay as the name, she pointed out that one of the meetings that she'd had with the NAACP, which is the National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People, which was the group that Martin Luther King led for the civil rights movement. Right. She had heard a speech by a man called Bayard Rustin, who was an openly gay black man, who said in 1964 that one day homosexual people will be fighting for their rights in the same way as black people were fighting for theirs. And that was 5 years before Stonewall, which is the great famous. So, so I came out to her. I knew she wouldn't condemn me, if I wasn't doing anything to harm somebody else. But she actually uplifted me by pointing out that there was somebody else fighting for gay rights back in 1964.
That then inspired you to carry on doing it. Yeah. Was there almost a relief, in a way, when you started going to those marches and meetings, that others came out to you and came and was there publicly? It was a feeling of a gathering of support around you.
Well, yes, I remember going to my first meeting, which was in the Middle Earth in Covent Garden, because I had been to see a film called Boys in the Band at the Odeon, Leicester Square, which was the first Hollywood film to deal with homosexuals. It was a party for a guy called Harold and his friends. And the film ended with the line, "If only we didn't hate ourselves so much." God. And I left the cinema, and there was a group of people who were demonstrating against the negative aspects of that movie. And they gave a leaflet saying, there is going to be a meeting of the Gay Liberation Front at the London School of Economics next week. So I went along and had the unusual experience of not asking passing students if they knew where there was a meeting being held by homosexuals. And I got to the door and I could see these people speaking excitedly inside in the room, but I didn't have the nerve to go in. I didn't actually go in, partly because I wasn't a student there and I thought maybe this was only for students, but also because I didn't feel I would be able to say anything sensible to these people who were already being active. But I did go to the next meeting, which, as I said, was held in Middle Earth, in Covent Garden, and they're thinking of putting up a plaque to that in Covent Garden. And we later found that the venue that we were holding that meeting was one of the last places where gay men were executed in the 16th century.
Goodness me, what an extraordinary story. Ollie, I can't imagine how much you've enjoyed, because even the few moments that we've been with Ted, he's just so infusing with all this history and passion. But for you to meet him, and as you said in the film, it's because of Ted and his peers and people like him that you were able to come out and live your truth.
It is. We've got to look back and, I mean, we had the most wonderful day. We really did. And Ted taught so many wonderful lessons and fabulous stories. And it is people like Ted that we get to do what we can do now. And again, it's for us then to then help the other generation like you have to our generation. But yeah, fabulous.
It's an amazing thing because you came out on television. I mean, can you imagine that, Ted, when you think about Ollie was in a reality TV show, when you think back to the struggle that you went through. And
those pictures not even being printed in the paper.
One day there will be a young man who is empowered enough on television in front of an audience of hundreds of thousands and then millions would feel comfortable. That's an extraordinary legacy that you've been able to enable.
Well, I am quite impressed because whenever I talk to other people about what's happened and the rights that we've achieved in these years, I have to point out that since 1967, when the law changed, which allowed us to demonstrate for our rights, we have overcome over 1,000 years of prejudice in such a short period of time. Because up until Henry VIII's time, the church used to condemn people, right? And the term faggot comes from the fact that the church used to say that the best way to get a fire strong enough to burn a witch was to tie homosexuals to their feet and burn them. That's what faggots, the term faggots originally came from. Now, I don't want to be too depressing about that, but it was Henry VIII who actually made homosexual offences a secular law. Up until then, it was the church.
And now that's an offensive term. Many people will be offended by the use of that term, but the history of that term and where it comes from is really important, just in understanding the prejudice that you have faced. Ollie, what about the future, though? You know, the path that Ted and his peers have trod, as you say, the path that you and your husband can now tread and your friends can now tread. And
you even filmed the wedding, which was an important decision, wasn't it?
We did.
I think that part of it.
I think that was something. It would have been a disservice, I feel, for us not to put our wedding on camera. We had this wonderful platform where we have millions of people watching us, and what I found extraordinary is when we put our wedding on camera, it became the highest watched wedding worldwide of 2020. 3.5 million people tuned into it, which became not only the biggest episode of Made in Chelsea ever after 26 seasons, but it was a gay wedding. It was a gay wedding that 3.5 million tuned in, and it was for that, and how far we have gone. I had to come out all those years ago, and I remember coming out and thinking, I'll tell my parents afterwards, because once it's in the can, it's there. I can't change that. But I knew that evening I went for a dinner with them, and then I came out knowing
So you did it with the film cameras first. You hadn't said to your parents, by the way, I'm going to do this tonight.
No.
You did it that way round, so you had no choice.
I had no choice. And that was for my own, everyone has their own process, but that was my process, being like, OK, now you have to step up and be like, let's be a grown-up now. And I've actually never met anyone that has ever regretted coming out. And it's something, you become free, and that's something that's always been...
And would that be what you would like to think the next stage was? Fighting for basic rights and safety, your battle was, wasn't it? And your battle is to make people more comfortable and aware of it. What's the next stage that you would hope can be moved to?
There are still many, many countries worldwide that have the death penalty. And a lot aren't talked about, and it's something that we would love to do that. There is still areas in London, areas in the UK that are still, it's terribly difficult to come out, and Ireland and places, and the laws aren't there for same-sex parents to have babies on the NHS and stuff like that, really. That's where we're standing. We're lucky we have 2 children on the way very shortly. We've got twin boy and girl arriving in about 9 weeks. And so I want to do everything we possibly can to make that easier for anyone to have children. If you want to be a parent, everyone deserves to be able to do that, whatever finances they have, if they are in a committed relationship and they want to.
And Ted, of course, we've just seen what's happening in Florida with the Don't Say Gay Act.
Yes.
And you think how far everything has come, and then all of a sudden, in somewhere like America, they've sort of, it feels like they've gone way, way back with regards to that law. How does that make you feel?
Well, I was slightly shocked, but not particularly surprised, because rather like the feminist demands or the black civil rights demands, we knew that this is an ongoing battle. You don't solve these problems in one go. So I knew that one day there would be a fight back by what I would say is the right wing. But I didn't expect it to be quite as bad as it's become. Uganda has just issued one of the strictest laws, anti-homosexual laws in history. They initially were proposing that any straight person who knew somebody who was gay and didn't tell the authorities could be arrested for that. But they left that out. And they also left out the suggestion that anybody declaring that they're gay should be a crime. But other than that, it's a really vicious crime and includes a death penalty for what they call aggravated homosexuality, which means if you are arrested for a homosexual offence more than once, you can be executed.
Even in Egypt right now, the police are using gay dating apps to try and find gay men to arrest them.
It's an ongoing battle, but I know that with Ted and his history and your peers, you're sort of up for the fight, and the other thing is you've got a lot of supporters now in the wider community, which is hugely important as well.
And who want to say thank you.
Allies
to you,
hugely
and also
important.
to you, Ollie.
It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you, Ted. Thank you for coming and sharing your story, and lovely to see you, Ollie, as well. Best of luck for the arrival of the twins as well.
Thank you so much.
Oh, my goodness me. Get your sleep in now.
Life will change.
Right.